Linda Rising is here with me, and she'll talk about interesting title here, How to Talk to the Elephant. And I'm still really puzzled, what is that going to be about? But I want to share with you a little tiny story. When I first time met Linda, I remember that. I was sitting in the first row at the conference, and then I see Linda coming slowly on the stage and opening that slide full of text of something. And then the next thing I remember, I was like, oh wow, we are in the middle of that super interesting story. And I forgot to think about everything else. Wow, what a great speaker she is. So at that day, I just decided when I grew up, I want to be like Linda. So welcome, Linda Rising. Have fun.
Thank you, Zuzi. What a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for inviting me to this amazing conference. It's astounding. Here we are all spending so much time online, and you, your wonderful audience, have decided to give me a little time this morning. I really, really appreciate it. I hope we'll have time for questions, and I'm offering my presentation. So on this first slide, you have my email address, linda@lindarising.org. If you don't get to ask a question, or if you think of something later, or if you'd like to have the PowerPoint so you could give the presentation and maybe make the slides a little better, translate them to another language. And that's true for any presentation you see of mine online. Just send me an email. I'll be happy to send you the PowerPoint and you can share all that information. So what are we going to talk about? Talking to elephants. If I could see you, I would ask you to raise your hands. How many have heard of the book, Thinking Fast and Slow? And then of those of you who have heard of it, how many of you actually bought the book? And of those who bought the book, how many read the first chapter? And of those, how many read the whole book? And I would suspect if I could see your hands, that I would see hardly anyone actually made it through the entire book. And that's okay. I understand that. It's a difficult book. It's an important book. So finally, I gave up. I realized people were not going to have time to read it. I would have to take time to help people understand what was in the book. It's about thinking. It's about how wrong we are about thinking. If you want to know more about the book, please just go to YouTube. I've given a talk, Thinking Fast and Slow. Search on Linda Rising, Thinking Fast and Slow. We don't have time to go through a lot about the book. We're just going to have a quick look at Kahneman's model. He says the brain is really made up of two pieces. The first one is System 1, the unconscious mind. The second is System 2, the conscious mind. And we don't have time, again, to go through this model in detail. The important thing for us is that the unconscious mind is a big part of the brain. This is a picture of an iceberg, and we know what an iceberg is. Most of the ice is below the water. So the analogy is the unconscious mind, System 1, is like the part of the iceberg below the water. And System 2 is like the part of the iceberg above the water. Now, psychologists have been working on this model for a long time, and now they're changing their view of System 1 and System 2 with regard to this iceberg metaphor. And if you can see this little tiny snowball on top of the peak above the water, psychologists now say that little tiny snowball, that's really what your System 2, your conscious mind is like. And all the rest of it, the part above the water and the part below the water. That's really what System 1 is like. System 1 is enormous, but it's unconscious, and we don't use it effectively. That's the message of thinking fast and slow. Well, this is just a model. Kahneman's model, it's an abstraction. It's really an attempt to explain the brain, but it's not really the brain. As George Box once said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And there are many other models of the brain, and I think it's good to have several so that those different viewpoints can help you do a better job of thinking. Shortly after Kahneman's work, 2 other books were published. The one by Jonathan Haidt is called The Happiness Hypothesis. And in it, he said, yes, System 1 and System 2, there's a lot of research by Daniel Kahneman and others, but I prefer to think of it in a different way. And he introduced a new model for the brain. That was picked up subsequently by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, and they wrote a book called Switch. How to change people, how to change organizations. This new model involved an elephant. Jonathan Haidt said, yes, System 1 and System 2, well, that's a good way to think about the brain, but really it would help me if I could think of the brain as an elephant with a rider. So the rider is small, the rider is rational, the rider is slow, the rider doesn't really have a lot of power. The rider is System 2. The elephant, on the other hand, is System 1. It's that big iceberg below the water and above the water. That's where all the power lies. That's where all of the emotion lies. And if we ask ourselves, who's in charge? The answer is, of course, System 1 or the elephant. Jonathan Haidt also introduced another piece of the model that is important. Kahneman didn't talk about it, but I'd like to include it, and that is the path, where you are, the context, what's going on in the environment around you. So I often talk about this metaphor, and in a class that I had been giving recently about thinking fast and slow, I said, Jonathan Haidt recommends that you talk to the elephant. And someone in the class said, well, Linda, could you give us some suggestions for how to talk to the elephant? And hence the idea for this talk was born. Now, the problem we all have is when we look at this picture and now you're trying to use it, thinking about how other people think. What I want you to remember is that this is a picture of the brain of all of us. This is not just the person you're talking to. This is you. Any conversation that you have with someone else, yes, you're probably talking to the elephant, but who's doing the talking? Who are you? You are your own elephant. And we tend to forget who's in charge. We tend to think, well, we are rational. Our rider is in control. The other person, oh, they're emotional, obviously. They're not always rational decision makers. But we, on the other hand, we have controlling, important, logical, rational riders. And that is unfortunately not the case. We are just as emotional. Our elephants are the ones that control us. Our elephants are the ones that decide where we're going to go. We have to learn to talk to our own elephants. The elephant is big and powerful. We know that's where all our emotions lie, also all our experience, all our expertise. That's where the decisions, the important decisions are made. Jonathan Haidt said, you can't change people's minds by utterly refuting their arguments. If you want to change people's minds, you have to talk to their elephants. The writer is the logical, rational piece of our brain, likes facts and reasons. Unfortunately, it tends to get involved in analysis paralysis, overanalyze, and also to believe that he has more control than he does, because the truth of the matter is, who's in charge? The elephant, of course. My favorite books on change are, of course, Fearless Change and More Fearless Change. And I'm going to introduce some of the patterns from these books along the way because they fit with these two models. The first pattern is called personal touch. If you're going to talk to anyone, realize that you're talking to the elephant. You should try to understand the point of view of the elephant. What's the elephant worried about? What's the elephant afraid of? And while you're at it, think about the rider, the rational, logical rider, and check out the path for this particular elephant. What path does this elephant walk every day? The expression we often use is walk a mile in the other's shoes. What does the elephant have to face every day? Most of the time we think of ourselves. We view the world through our own experience, our own expertise. We don't often stop and think, well, what does the world look like through others? Because if we don't, we won't be able to understand how that person views the problem at hand, how that person sees the idea that you have, how that person sees the way you want that elephant to go. So the first thing we have to do before we can talk to the elephant is get the rider out of the way. The rider likes data. And of course, we love data. We love logic. So talk to the rider a little bit and give some reasons, a nice logical argument. The rider tends to focus on problems, what's wrong. So if you can direct the rider by pointing out things that are already working, to say things that are already being done correctly, those are called bright spots. There's an enormous amount of research around the power of bright spots, to point out what is already good and then to build on that. So that will keep the rider busy. Give the rider some nice data, some information about your idea, and point out what is already working for the rider and the elephant. Because we think this is what an argument or a convincing influencer is: data. We believe in facts. We think facts are convincing. And when they don't work, we think the other people who are listening to us don't understand. They must be stupid. When the reality is, only the writer cares about data. If we're really going to influence another person, we have to talk to the elephant. Truth and facts are not important to the elephant. Of course, we can change. Of course, we can pay attention to facts. But the elephant cares about self-preservation, self-protection, identity, How the elephant feels is a bigger deciding factor than whatever the writer tends to get from facts and data. The whole episode is based on a story that we tell ourselves. We make decisions based on our own story. The story isn't a reflection of facts or reality. We make it up continually. We think of ourselves as scientists looking at data, when really we're more like lawyers trying to find holes in arguments, trying to make sense within our own minds of what the world is like. And we care more about the consistency of our own story than we do about any facts or data, any picture or view of reality. So, how do you talk to the elephant? The elephant is an emotional creature. Easily scared, it needs reassurance. Do not scare the elephant. The elephant will stampede. The elephant will run away. The elephant doesn't like to be scared. The elephant likes stories. The elephant likes stories that make the elephant feel good, that make the elephant feel happy. Likes ideas that will work well. And of course, the elephant likes peanuts, food, snacks. Food has brought people together as long as there have been people. Having food, telling a story, that's how we make decisions. The elephant says, I might not listen to you unless you listen to me first. There are so many books and articles and studies about listening, and I think most of them are wrong. The metaphor I like for good listening is a trampoline. On a trampoline, you jump up and down. The trampoline helps you bounce into the air. A good listener does exactly that. A good listener doesn't just say, oh, yeah, and echo back what we've said every now and then. A good listener helps us bounce higher. A good listener gives us an improvement on our ideas, suggestions, things we might think about. A good listener is like a trampoline. It helps us be better. A good listener is responsive. Elephants are happy to listen to your story, but the first thing they want you to do is listen, really listen to them. If they don't trust you, elephants are going to run away. And you can't do that in just one setting. It takes repeated visits. Go back. Pay attention. See how much progress the elephant has been making. It's not a once and done. I'm going to go convince the elephant and then I'm leaving. You have to go back and reassure the elephant. See what progress is being made. In fact, there have been experiments that show we do really well if we have the feeling that we're making progress. There's a very famous experiment that was done with a car wash in the United States. Loyalty cards given to customers say, if you buy 10 car washes, you can get one for free. And in the experiment, randomly selected people were given a loyalty card with punch cards on it for 10 car washes. Others, randomly selected, were given a loyalty card, but this one had 12 punches. And they were told, you're going to have 12 car washes before you get a free one, but we will start you out with 2 for free. So let's just give you those first 2 punches, boom, boom. Now that meant the 2 loyalty cards had exactly the same number of punches. But the research shows that those who had the 2 free at the beginning were more likely to sooner get their free car wash. Show the elephant what's already working. Show the elephant how much progress has already been made. If you want a team to adopt a new tool, say what they already know that will apply. The interface for the new tool is a lot like the old tool. You won't have any trouble picking up the new future. Don't scare the elephant. And take tiny steps. It's often the case that in organizations and individuals, we want to make change quickly. The reality is all change takes time. Right now, no one in the United States is flying unless they have to, but people are still taking small trips, and they're getting in cars and they're driving. And we know that on a long drive, it's very difficult to think about driving all day. So you break it up and you say, all right, in an hour, we will stop. In an hour, we will get coffee. It's much easier to think about a long trip as a series of small baby steps than to think of one long 8.5-hour drive, sitting, baby steps. Organizations typically have a timeline. They want change right away. They want to be able to plan it out. They want to be able to map it and say, we will all be agile by next June. Typically doesn't work. It's much better to start with small experiments, little steps. Take that big effort, that giant organization, break it into little tiny chunks. It's a famous story about an elephant who used to drink 3 liters of Mountain Dew every day. Mountain Dew is a ridiculously caffeinated beverage in the United States that's loaded with sugar. Anyone who drinks 3 liters is consuming about 60 grams of sugar every single day. So the physician of this particular elephant said, this is not a healthy habit, but realized there was no way the elephant was going to stop immediately drinking all that Mountain Dew, and suggested instead, well, let's cut back to 2 liters. And then when that was done, well, let's cut back to 1 liter. And when that was done, well, maybe an occasional can, a 12-ounce can of Mountain Dew. That particular elephant took 1.5 years to change that habit, lost 25 pounds in the process, enjoys an occasional can of Mountain Dew, but did change that habit. It's hard for elephants if they really like Mountain Dew, but they can do it step by step. Make the change as small as possible. We know that especially in the beginning, if the change looks too big, it's overwhelming. Instead of 3 liters of Mountain Dew, make it, 2 liters of Mountain Dew, and then make it, 1 liter of Mountain Dew. Don't discourage the elephant. The elephant is an emotional creature that runs away. Remember, elephants are afraid of mice. They're actually not afraid of mice, but they don't like little tiny creatures that upset them. They don't see well, and they get spooked easily. You would think a big elephant would not be afraid of small creatures. So don't scare the elephant. I'm a fan of the growth mindset. And we know that in most organizations, they don't believe that people can grow. They want to plan it out, spend a lot of time on planning, and then do it. And there isn't any time along the way to learn and practice. I've never yet seen an organizational plan for change that included a chance to learn, to practice, to fail, to get better, that encouraged coaching instead of keeping score. There's a wonderful new article just out in Harvard Business Review that addresses this. Again, we don't have time to cover it, but I'll be happy to send you that paper. Just ask for it. Know that the elephant is bound up in identity. When a decision is made, it's not about weighing the benefits, at looking at the logical reasons. It's about saying, who am I? What is my path? What should someone like me do? We all want to be good role models, good members of our tribe. If you violate the identity of the elephant, you're doomed to failure. Pattern from fearless change is to ask the elephant for help. I can't do this on my own. We're in the middle of a big change effort. Would you help me? Arthur Help said, we all admire the wisdom of people who ask us for advice. If someone helps you, then they begin to believe that they must like you and your idea. Asking for help is a powerful way to involve others. Sometimes you're not the one who can talk to the elephant. Sometimes the elephant doesn't trust you. Sometimes it's better to send over an elephant that the resistant elephant already knows. A friend, someone who can help the resistant elephant find a better path. Hand over your job of convincing the resistor to someone else that the elephant knows and trusts. It's really good if you can find someone to play the role of bridge builder, someone who was initially skeptical but began to see that your idea had merit. That person is very influential with a resistant elephant. And then one of my most powerful patterns from fearless change is sometimes this resistant elephant has power. Might be a high-level executive elephant. In my experience, high-level executives are often fearful and ignorant. They're afraid to ask for help. They're afraid to admit ignorance. They're afraid to admit fear. The pattern whisper in the general's ear said, you have to get to know those people and offer one-on-one counsel and advice. And you must take time to build trust with those elephants, because often they don't have anyone they can ask. They don't have anyone who can help alleviate their ignorance. So you work on their schedule. If they want you to come in for a 7 a.m. meeting, be there. If they want to ask silly questions, you have to have a good answer that they can understand. And over time, you will build trust and you'll have influence. Too often, I see change agents go into organizations and they try to line up the entire herd of executive elephants. They say, well, let's talk to all the executives at the same time. Rule number 1, never talk to elephants in groups. They will never ask questions. They will never admit ignorance. They will never show fear. They're too afraid inside the herd that if they look like they don't know something, then others will pick up on that and won't follow them anymore. Talk to resistant elephants who have power one-on-one. Yes, you could say, well, this will take longer. Yeah, but talking to elephants in groups will not save time. It's just going to cover up any real issues. Don't forget the path. We know that we're profoundly affected by context. It was a very famous experiment done with popcorn that gave people different sizes of popcorn containers when they went into a movie. And they said, this is free. You can eat as much as you want. And at the end of the movie, they found that those people who had larger containers ate more. Now you could say, well, some people like popcorn. Yes, of course, we do. But this popcorn was stale. It tasted terrible. but people ate it anyway. And they were driven by the size of the container. Research shows that we make decisions about what we eat based on the color of the container, the size of the container, how close it is to us. The worst part of all of the experiments in how we are affected by our environment shows that people who are in the experiments believe they are not affected by size, color, and location. One of my favorite experiments has to do with Google, who realized people were eating too much junk food. So they took all the M&Ms, they moved them away from the door, and they put them in an opaque container, a container where you couldn't see the contents. They found by just doing those simple things that the 2,000 people who worked in the New York office consumed 3.1 million fewer calories in 7 weeks. Now, the people at Google are smart, just like you. They want to be healthy, just like you. If they can be helped by moving those M&Ms, maybe that would work for you. You know, that's difficult to change. That requires a certain amount of neuronal adjustment in our brains. Don't ever tell people what to do. Just make it easier for them. Don't tell people to stop eating M&Ms. They already know that. They know they should do it. Find a way to help them make better decisions. And by the way, this works on your elephant as well. If you're trying to stop eating M&Ms, as I know everybody in the United States is right now because we are home on lockdown and most of us are eating too much, don't buy them in the first place. That will make your path easier. And if you do buy them, please put them in a sealed container that is opaque so you can't see the contents, and put it on the top shelf. Research shows that will cut down your consumption by a statistically significant amount. Make the path easier. If you want the elephant to go a certain way, make it easier. Make it easier for the herd. As soon as elephants see other elephants heading in a given direction, they all go. And I've been talking about elephants, but I really mean people, humans. We are herd animals. We care about fitting in. We want to do what others are doing. We want others to think that we know what we're doing, to care for us, to believe we're smart. We've evolved to have those tendencies. We know that we've evolved to survive in a group. So that's why we care so much about social connection. It was death to be ostracized or to be cast out. That's why deep down, that elephant really wants to do what everyone else is doing. No, it can be done. I've read a book recently that showed me an amazing transformation. An elephant, an extreme white supremacist elephant, changed his mind. The book is called Rising Out of Hatred. It's a difficult book, but it's a story of how an elephant changes. In it, I saw this comment. People who disagreed with me were critical in this process, especially those who were my friends, regardless, but who let me know when we talked about it that they thought my beliefs were wrong. And they took the time to provide evidence and arguments. I didn't always agree with them, but I listened to them and they listened to me. That's the key. Listen. After the election in 2016, I felt I had to do something to be involved. So I joined an organization called Braver Angels. In it, we hold workshops We have debates. We bring people on both sides of the political spectrum together, both kinds of elephants, red and blue. And in doing this, I realized I needed help in trying to talk to people who don't agree with me. I realized I spend most of my time around people who feel the same way I do, and had come to believe that, well, the people on my side are intelligent. The people on my side understand reality. The people on my side, well, they get it. The people on the other side, well, they must be stupid. They don't understand the issues. Who knows what's going on in their brain? And I needed some help. I needed to learn how to listen. I needed to learn how to communicate with people who don't agree with me. I had to get my own elephant to listen to other elephants. Know that you're never going to change others' beliefs. Sometimes they are so hardwired. They're the result of the way we are, the way we were brought up, the culture we live in. That should not be the goal. We want people to move in the same direction. They may never have the same set of beliefs. Changing behavior, that's a lot easier than changing beliefs. And that should be our focus. And the way you change behavior, talk to the elephant. So I want to thank you and thank your elephant for listening today. I hope maybe you have some ideas for having good conversations with people who might not agree with you. And that out of that conversation, you'll find that your elephant and their elephant will learn to walk together. Thanks for listening. I hope Zuzi might have some questions for me. We shall see.
I do. Thank you very much for this talk. And I have a couple of questions here. So if you can click on that unshare icon at the bottom, so the slides will disappear because now they see, yeah, that's it. Thank you. So the first question from Jensa is, after reading Fast and Slow and then coupling it with NVC book from Rosenberg, I often observe that exposing elephants is not the most difficult part, but fulfilling the needs of elephants are. Does it require any special education? Because opening the box needs to be closed as well. If not done right, then it can do more harm than any good. So if you have any thoughts, he asked.
So, the problem is when we begin to talk about communicating with people who don't agree with us, we often think of the most extreme examples and the worst people who disagree with us. Most people are not like that. Most people who are on the other side are remarkably like us. Some of the most difficult conversations I've had recently were in Braver Angels. And in a debate a few weeks ago, I had to have a one-on-one conversation with someone who believes that we should all be carrying guns of various kinds. We should all be armed, even children. We should be carrying guns to school. We should be carrying guns to the grocery store. I think that's an extreme position. But after talking with this individual, listening to his elephant, I thought, this is a person with a good heart. He believes what he believes because of the way he was raised. He doesn't think we should go out into the street and shoot each other. He thinks we should all have education and training in carrying guns. There's a whole country, Switzerland, that believes that exactly. He's concerned, as I am, that things have gotten out of hand. There were so many areas of commonality where we agreed that things had gone wrong. I came away from that conversation totally transformed and feeling that before the conversation, I would have judged this person so differently. But now, after sitting down together, I realized we're not so far apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could work together if we had to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the message.
Interesting. There's this question from Victoria, which I have a similar one, I think, in my head right now, listening to you. And what Victoria said, she says, I feel that one has to be in the right mindset to be able to talk and listen to the elephant of someone else. So how can one prepare for such talks?
This is a mindset talk. It is a growth mindset. If you believe that people are what they are and they can't change, that does have an impact on your conversation. And I think what you have to tell yourself is that you have to learn. We're not born with these skills. I believed I was a good communicator before I joined Braver Angels. I thought I'm a facilitator. I know how to talk to difficult people, but I didn't. I had to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the myth that we all have, that we think we know how to do this. We think we know how to listen. We think we know how to communicate, but we don't. It's a skill. We can learn it, but not all of us have it.
Mm-hmm.
And until we have those skills, until we look at some books like Thinking Fast and Slow to realize how we have such flawed thinking and that we all have elephants that get in the way. Until we realize that, then every time we go into a conversation, we think, oh, we are rational. This other person, on the other hand, they clearly are irrational. They don't understand. So I must somehow bring them in. Well, no, we are all irrational.
Mm-hmm.
All of us. We all have these giant elephants that are leading us. And then we make up a story about how we are okay and those other people are crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're perfectly right. It's just so interesting once you're talking about all that, right? You see yourself like in different situations. Here's another question from Peter. How do you make elephants curious about something new?
You don't have to do that. They are. Elephants are naturally curious. Oh, yes. In fact, that's a good way to engage them and to include them. So, a story from my past in talking to an elephant, to realize that if I was going to bring them in for patterns, for Agile, get them to experiment with Scrum, it would be to use their natural curiosity. So you have to know, well, what do they care about? So in my case, I was working at a telecommunications company, and it was a subsidiary of Bell Labs. And everyone in the organization cared about what Bell Labs was doing. So in talking to a very resistant elephant, I said, I just read an interesting article in the Bell Labs Technical Journal. And it said they are beginning to experiment with Scrum. And he said, oh, really? I didn't know that. He said, do you happen to have a copy of that article? I said, yes, I do. I'll bring it by your office. You can have a look at it. You might be interested in what they are doing, because I know that your part of the organization works with Lucent. and you would want to be in the know about what they are doing. So I didn't tell him, oh, you should use Scrum or what everybody else is using. I said, you might be interested.
Yeah, that's the skillful communication, right?
Absolutely. And you can't do it unless you know that elephant.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just go up to any elephant and say, here, have a peanut. Follow me. We're going to do Scrum. No. You have to find out, what does that elephant want?
Mm-hmm.
What does the elephant care about? What is the path that elephant is already on?
Mm-hmm.
That takes time, that takes energy, that takes caring. You have to care about that other elephant.
Mm-hmm. It's very different from what is happening as a major trend in this industry, right?
Yes.
I think that's the next question from Kim says, what have you observed within yourself that signals to you that your own elephant is being startled or frightened?
So I will admit my own bias. I have always hated Donald Trump. And when I went to join Braver Angels, I had to ask myself a question. The question was, could I see any evidence that would prove to me that Donald Trump was an intelligent, caring, wise political leader? And I could feel it in myself. I had to say, no, there is nothing that would convince me. And so now I know that's on me.
Mm-hmm.
That's my bias. So that's the question. If nothing would convince you, if you could not see any evidence, then that means you are biased. That's a way of uncovering your own wrongful elephant. The elephant has already decided, not going to listen to anybody, not going to pay any attention to logic. That's an unfortunate tendency of system one. It does not listen to logic. So we all have it.
Super interesting. And we have a last minute. So in that one last minute, before we thank you for this talk, is there any one thing you would like people to remember, right? Like the last sentence from you.
I wanted to be hopeful. That's why I read the book, Rising Out of Hatred. The book, Rising Out of Hatred, is about someone who is a white supremacist, who was raised to be a white supremacist, who has a long list of people who they denigrate. Black people, people of color, Jews, those people are bad. He was raised that way. He was told that from the time he was a child. And to see in that book, it took years, but the transformation from someone who was a leader in the white supremacist movement to change over to leaving all of that behind. It was a difficult book to read. I struggled at times, but the end was worth it. It was a happy ending. And I thought, yes, we need that. We need a happy ending. Well, you can change. You can change.
Thank you very much. It's pretty nice, optimistic, and we can change. That's so nice. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Now we
Susie.
have a 10 minutes break, and then we can look forward for what's next. Okay, see you next.